Are you tired of modern MMOs? Looking for something a little different? A while ago, I tried playing Ultima Online for the first time over 25 years after it originally released, and the general consensus is that it's nothing like how it was back in its prime in the early 2000s. And I have to agree, I thought the game was interesting, but pretty underwhelming overall. But what if I told you that you could experience peak early 2000s Ultima Online today for free? A game where you can play however you want in a thriving server with thousands of other players. Be an adventurer with dozens of skill combinations to fit your playstyle and seek out treasure and glory in dungeons. Or a sailor that enjoys fighting in the open seas. Maybe that's all too flashy and dangerous for your taste, and you want to instead be a humble lumberjack or miner that sells your materials to build your wealth. Maybe you get addicted to the income that jacking lumber provides and you do it in multiple characters, at the same time, for double the profit. Experience the dread of other players that can become hostile at any time and turn on you, murder you, and steal all of your loot and gear from your corpse before you can get back to it in time. A completely player-driven economy that's thriving, where you can peddle your wares and spend your fortunes. I'm of course talking about Ultima Online Outlands. Honestly, the only thing this game is missing is real-time epic tank battles with a huge selection of iconic tanks from different nations and eras. But good news, because this video is sponsored by World of Tanks. World of Tanks is a high-octane multiplayer tank battling experience like none other. If tanks are your thing, well, you're in luck because there are over 600 different options to choose from, with iconic tanks from different eras and nations ranging from powerful heavy tanks to fast and agile vehicles.
That's quite big.
Impressive.
Not to mention all the customization options available to find the perfect tank for you. In World of Tanks, strategy is paramount. Precision in your maneuvers and positioning is key to dominating the battlefield. But be warned, from the sweeping dunes of vast deserts to the dense foliage of mysterious forests, across more than 40 maps, they might just catch your eye. Don't lose focus amidst the beauty of the chaos. The excitement never fades with World of Tanks, thanks to regular updates featuring special events, challenging missions, and fresh content that keeps the game endlessly engaging. And the best part, it's completely free to play. That's right, so everyone's invited to join the fun. Whether you're a pro or new to the battlefield, you're welcome to join the fray. Be sure to click on the link in the description below to join the fun and destroy some enemy tanks. Each new player receives a welcome pack worth $20. Also, the game supports platoons for up to 3 players, so grab 2 buddies and have some fun. Don't miss out on this opportunity for glory. Click the link in the description below to start your adventure in World of Tanks and become a legend on the battlefield. Now, back to the video. Not long after playing retail Ultima Online, I discovered Outlands, which is a custom server of Ultima Online that keeps the foundation of the game in place, but changes many elements to make it feel like what Ultima Online might have been in its prime, with modern quality of life enhancements. With a slightly smaller but very active and dedicated community, the world is always active and lively, and there's so much I'd like to talk about with this game, and if I tried to cover everything, well, this video would be way too long. Instead, I want to share the story of my journey with Outlands and why I've been enjoying it so much, but I also want to cover some of the unique gameplay mechanics that make Outlands stand out from modern MMOs. Because if you're like I was and begin playing Outlands for yourself, my hope is that you'll have a better understanding of the game and can enjoy it more, since I initially struggled a bit. I mean, here's just a few things that happened to me while playing Outlands. I stumbled upon a guild fighting a boss and randomly joined them. While helping out, I died, but they were kind enough to resurrect me, and while trying to get my stuff back, the boss was finally killed. Since I was a stranger crashing their raiding party, and strangers can sometimes be a bit troublesome in Outlands, I begged for mercy so I could grab my gear and leave, since I just wanted to experience what a boss fight was like for myself. To ensure I didn't try any funny business, they killed me, looted the boss, revived me when they were finished, and let me grab my stuff so I could be on my merry way. They were really chill about the whole thing. I teleported to a dungeon, and outside was a pile of corpses where a disgruntled player was camping another one, killing him over and over again, but continued to stubbornly resurrect and die each time. It was pretty hilarious to watch. I spent thousands of gold purchasing a valuable aspect core to empower my character, and the moment I purchased it, another player was hidden in the shadows and stole it out of my bag the instant the transaction was completed. I didn't even realize it was gone until later and thought the game glitched. That was until they revealed to me on Discord of their nefarious actions. It's pretty wild out there. But in order to share my story, we have to start back to the very beginning. You see, when I played retail Ultima Online, I created Hot Dog the Warrior, an adventure that had 3 major goals: complete a dungeon, buy a house, and buy a boat. It turned out that 2 of the 3 goals were locked behind a paywall, and because of that, Hot Dog failed his mission. Instead, Hot Dog traveled to the world of Avedon, where Outlands is set, and started a new life. as Hot Dog 2.
Rogan?
With the same 3 goals in mind as my win condition, I was determined to complete a dungeon, own a house, and own a boat. With the little research of the game ahead of time, I understood that a bard template was a good solo start for brand new players. Hot Dog 2 was created, and I appeared in Shelter Island, which is the starting location for new players to familiarize themselves with the game's mechanics. Just like in Retail Ultima, all of the windows are customizable, so I arranged the screen to be a little more to my liking. Also like classic Ultima Online, your inventory is just random items that sit in your bag that you need to organize and arrange yourself. Once I got familiar with everything, I dug into the settings and made many adjustments to make the game less cumbersome, which everyone playing the game should do immediately. Also, just like Retail Ultima Online, you don't have standard classes or level up in a traditional sense. Instead, you pick from the dozens of different skills to mix and match to your liking, only being able to max out up to around 7 of them, so pick wisely. Since Hot Dog 2 was a bard, he picked barding and mace combat skills, which would be perfect for adventuring solo. Everything was set and I was ready to start honing my skills in the new player dungeon. I played a tune that buffed my character, then proceeded into the depths. It was time to get barding. Now with barding skills, just like the classic bard of fantasy lore, I'd play my musical instrument, which pacified the targeted enemy, and while it sat there idly, I'd smash it with my giant 2-handed maul. You know, just like bards do. Once they're calm, you simply beat them to death. It's as easy as that. And that. And that. Not terribly complicated. Shelter Island only allowed you to level up your skills to 80, but the maximum you can raise them naturally is 100. So I stayed in the new player dungeon until my skills were high enough, then I was ready to leave the safety of Shelter Island and make my way into the rest of the world. I boarded a ship that took me to the bustling city of Prevalia. After exploring the town square for a bit, I found my way to the training dummy, where you can passively level up your skills until they're maxed out. Not even kidding, Outlands comes with an additional program called Razor that can do all kinds of fancy things, like making a macro that plays your abilities on an unending loop and you can set it and forget it. Once that's set up, you just hit play and leave it running overnight and voila, your skills are now completely maxed out. Well, almost. At this point, Hot Dog 2 was ready to leave Prevalia and go on his first real adventure, fighting the orcs at the nearby fortress of Urukton Bluffs. It was a long but scenic walk from the gates of the city through the wilderness, but I arrived at the entrance of the bluffs in no time. Blood and bones were scattered everywhere, but Hot Dog 2 remained vigilant, tightening the grip of his trusted barding maul and engaged the first enemy. One by one, I would pacify the foul orc with my tune, then slowly beat them to death. Sometimes Hot Dog's fingers would slip on the harp and fail to pacify his target, but he also had the chivalrous skill which allowed him to heal himself in the heat of battle. Then he would play the peaceful tune of death once again and continue bonking. After getting a taste of real combat, I used another chivalry spell to create a town portal and return to Prevalia. Chivalry is a really useful skill, by the way. I was moving too slowly on foot, so I found the Prevalian stables and purchased a fine steed with my newly acquired gold. He was a majestic stallion, and, as is tradition, I named him Tao after my good friend. I spent the remaining gold from my visit with the orcs on a traditional bard outfit, a full set of plate mail. I suited up and was ready to pay another visit to the orcs. Urukton Bluffs is the recommended dungeon for new players after Shelter Island, and that's where I spent most of my time early on doing loot runs. And once I filled my bag with gold and treasure, I would create a portal back to Prevalia and drop off any valuables I would find into my bank box. I was slowly collecting a stockpile of valuable treasure. Come to find out, most of it was garbage, but I had no idea at the time. Slowly getting more comfortable with the game, I felt like I was ready to explore other areas of the world. Before setting off on a new adventure, I visited the Prevalia Society Hall, where you can earn tokens for completing weekly tasks. Those tokens can be used for rewards if you have enough, but for now, I was just getting my feet wet. There was a reward for killing 25,000 gold worth of creatures in the dungeon of Mount Petrum. The perfect task for Hot Dog 2. I teleported to the base of the mountain leading into the depths of the dungeon and played my bard music to empower me in preparation. I entered Mount Petrum and was greeted by 2 monsters. It was time to grind some kills and complete my society job. Dungeons have multiple levels to them, and the deeper you go, the more dangerous the enemies are. But the better the loot you'll find too. I continued farming monsters on level 1 and 2, and things were going really well. The more monsters I slayed, the closer I was to completing the society job I accepted. And then, I let my guard down. trapdoor spider was hidden in plain sight and ensnared me and poisoned me while I was fighting a heartbeat. I was quickly overwhelmed, and before you knew it, I died. So, dying in this game is pretty brutal. You appear by your corpse as a ghost and have to make your way out of the dungeon to find a healer. The issue is that you come back with 1 HP and all your gear is left on your corpse, minus a few special blessed items that you always keep. You just need to be extra careful. Oh. Okay. Let's try this again. After healing up and using my chivalry spells to keep me alive while dodging as much as I could, I made it back to my corpse and tried grabbing all my loot back. That darn trapdoor spider returned though, and I was close to death again before being able to get the rest of my gear, so I had to fall back and come up with a new plan. Okay, let's try this again. At least this corpse was a lot easier to get to and had my weapon and some of my armor on it. I just need to get the rest of my stuff now. I charged in pantless with a small army of creatures chasing close behind me. Once I got to my original corpse, I panic spammed all my items and almost died again before I could grab my stuff. A clutch heal bought me enough time to grab the last of my precious loot and I turned to run. After an easy escape, I left the dungeon and followed my normal cadence by creating a town portal, returning to the bank, and depositing my treasures. I found a cool new hat and returned to Mount Petrum to continue hunting monsters. While fighting, I got stuck between this guy and a monster. He helped me kill it quickly enough and I looted the gold from its corpse. But when I went to the next creature, the guy attacked me.
Oh no!
I was killed almost immediately. When I got back to my corpse, almost all my stuff was gone. You see, in Outlands, a player doesn't have to live by the virtues and can go down a path of darkness. And at any time you're outside of the safety of towns, a player can try to kill you and steal almost everything from your corpse. Players in Outlands are normally flagged as blue, which means you've committed no crime, and if someone attacks you, they're penalized. If you attack another player or commit any sort of crime in Outlands, you'll be flagged as a criminal and turned from blue to gray. If you accidentally take loot from another player or accidentally attack someone, watch out. Once you turn gray, you can be killed and looted without any penalty. There are settings you can enable that help prevent accidentally doing this, but after committing a crime and turning gray, you just have to hide and wait for a short period of time to become blue again. I didn't realize this at the time, and the loot I took off the monster was actually for the other player, and that turned me gray temporarily, which is what prompted him to kill me. Oops. The guy was further down the cave, and I figured I'd ask to see if he would show me some grace. Which he did. After he realized I was just a complete noob, he dropped my crappy gear on the ground and let me continue to farm in peace. But not all players are like this. This guy came up to me and just started attacking me out of the blue. At first I tried to defend myself, but my bard build is really bad for PvP, and I realized it was a losing battle. I left the dungeon and tried to flee, but in a panic, I couldn't figure out how to escape until I was run down and murdered in cold blood. I ran back to my corpse and looted as quickly as I could, and the guy just stood there and let me get my stuff. I tried to create a town portal to leave, but it goes under cooldown when you enter PvP. Oh, good for you. Good for you, jerk. Killing one blue person marks you gray temporarily, but if you commit 5 acts of murder, you become a dreaded red player. Reds. They're the worst of the worst. You always gotta be on your guard since you never know when one might come after you. Sometimes they travel in groups and run through a dungeon, killing anyone in their path and taking away all your valuables. PvP players are always sweaty, and going to their channel in the Outlands Discord server gives you the same sensation as huffing glue. I'm mostly joking, of course, but the fact that you can get jumped by these players at any point in time outside of the safety of town is part of the reason why Outlands is so fun. There's always a sense of danger, and there's a lot of risk versus reward when dungeon crawling, especially when traveling alone. Anyways, after getting my stuff back from my corpse, I left for town again and realized that I needed to make some more cash fast. To earn more gold, I made a new character named John Craftsman, specifically for chopping wood, and boy did he chop some wood. Like I said earlier, almost the entire economy is player driven, and the people trying to level up their crafting skills need raw materials like lumber and ore. The main way to get these materials are to either farm them yourself or buy stacks of 5,000 apiece. The rich players tend to buy, and the poor players tend to supply. I was supplying. I would turn 5,000 logs into a commodity, which is how these items were traded, and I went into the Outlands Discord selling channel to start peddling my wares. After finding a viable buyer, it's customary to meet at Shelter Island since crimes can't be committed there. 5,000 logs for a 55,000 gold check, just like that.
Nice.
I deposited my check into the bank and it was time to begin true character progression. Like Like I said at the beginning of the video, you don't level up in the traditional sense in Ultima Online. After you distribute your 700 points into different skills to make your character build, there are 3 ways you can progress your character: Skill Codex, Aspect Mastery, and the Mastery Chain. The cheapest one to get first is your Weapon and Skill Codex. It's a book that you can either craft for yourself or more likely buy from another player that empowers a specific skill as you max out its levels. These items are also blessed, so they can't be looted from your corpse. Being a bard, my first purchase was the Bard Codex, which I could spend the available points on different buffs to my songs. Keeping the Codex in your bag, you'll get experience points for every monster kill and eventually increase its level, allowing you to spend more points on additional buffs. This worked out twofold, as I was now progressing my Bard Codex, and I was able to complete my original society job of slaying monsters in Mount Petrum.
Yeah, boy.
But this wasn't enough. It's never enough. Back to chopping wood. My new friend, Necromir, became my go-to buyer, and we had a good thing going on. Checks were deposited into the bank, and the income was used to buy a mace codex, which would allow me to use different empowered stances to improve my mace combat. Since I completed my society job at Mount Petrum, I began farming back at Urukton Bluffs. My codexes were slowly leveling up as I continued the grind. And while most players are chill and great to be around, some people are jerks, and if you're farming in their spot, they'll turn on you. Bards are really bad at PvP, and even if they were good, I'm not. My immediate response is to panic and run, which is exactly what I did. For whatever reason, this guy didn't want to leave me alone, so I kept running until I entered a human encampment, which I thought would protect me, except they were under attack by orc forces at the moment. In my panic, I ended up hiding inside a tower, feeling very clever. Oh. Well, never mind then. As I reported him for murder, the orcs turned on poor Tao and beat him to death. I'm sorry, Tao. Huh. You ever get that feeling of deja vu? Tao? Tao, is that you? Anyways, there was a healer right beside me, so I resurrected and tried to sneak past the orcs to get back to my body. Unsuccessfully. Let's try that again. This time, I snuck behind the tower and was able to pilfer my gear without issue. I helped another player defend the camp and defeated the remaining orcs. While still mourning Tao's passing, I went back to the stable to purchase a new fine steed. Tao too. When I returned to the camp again, the orc threat was completely destroyed, and the other player offered to help me and led me into a building, which turned out to be his house, which he locked me in and set his pets to kill me. It was all in good fun though, and he let me take my crappy gear and leave. As I went back to the bluffs to kill more orcs, I met another player and we teamed up. I'll talk about this more later, but dungeon crawling in a group is way better than going in solo. Wait, where'd my friend go? Oh, okay then. Oops. I was almost ready for moving into the next level progression, the Aspect Mastery, but first I needed more gold. Instead of chopping wood on the same account, I created a second one and was chopping while questing at the same time. I'd collect 5,000 logs, turn them into a commodity, then sell them to the highest bidder. Aspects are the second way to progress your character in a significant way. There are currently 19 different aspect types you can use, which each have their own buffs to specific abilities. Since I was focusing on a bard template, I wanted the lyric aspect, which would provide even stronger buffs to my barding skills, but this is a bit more in-depth in the Codex system. First, you need to make an aspect kit to actually unlock the aspect of choice. I finally saved up enough gold to purchase a few new key items to unlock the lyric aspect, starting with the master crafting diagram. Aspect cores and distillations are items needed to unlock and level up your aspect, but unless you're lucky and get enough while farming monsters, you'll have to buy them. I went back to the Discord market and found a seller and spent all my savings to make the transaction. A master crafting Good Samaritan offered to help take all my acquired materials and craft them into the aspect kit I needed to finally unlock my new aspect. I gave him the supplies, and after a few minutes of tinkering, I was given my prize. I returned to my inn room and finally unlocked the lyric aspects on both my weapon and armor. Alright, time to explore another dungeon. Just like the codexes, you get experience for killing monsters, but after you reach the max with your aspect, you have to spend more aspect cores and distillations to increase its level, but this improves the buffs it gives you. After farming enough kills, I had to invest my acquired wealth back into leveling my aspect. Once that was done, I could level it up and continue farming from there. I found the deadly mausoleum and ventured into its depths. I was even able to challenge a powerful vampire, and after a grueling battle, I defeated it in solo combat and reaped all of its rewards. After that, I ventured into the caves of Viscero to fight and slay dragons. But it wasn't enough. When I wasn't leveling up my skills in questing, I would use scripts from Razor to double window both accounts simultaneously to maximize my lumber gains. I personally found the mausoleum to be a pretty low-key area where I'd regularly farm, and it was a monotonous route, but it was easy to do, and I found it to be quite relaxing too. After a few weeks of leveling my codexes and aspects and building my character's skills, I thought I was finally ready to complete one of Hot Dog's main goals, beating a dungeon. Urukton Bluffs was one of the most beginner-friendly dungeons that you could complete solo. I went through the fort, past the orcs' defenses, and into the entrance of the dungeon. I ignored the weaker enemies of the first 2 levels, running past them before they could catch me. I calmed the spiders with a lullaby and crushed them with my staff, clearing a path to the next level. Running past the ogres and ettins, I was close to my main target in the 3rd and hardest floor. My heart calmed even the fiercest of ogres, paving a road of corpses to my final target, the Jotun King. A 2-headed giant with a massive club, but even he was susceptible to my enchanting tunes, giving me an opening to whittle his health down. I had to be careful though. The Jotun King's fortitude was strong and would break free of my charm and begin fighting back, but I remained vigilant as the battle was almost over. Until finally, one last mighty swing brought the beast to its end and it slumped to the floor, and it was over. I scooped up the gold from the king's corpse, and just like that, I made my escape through a dungeon portal leading me back to Parvalia. And while the reward from the Jotun King was fairly meager, I was more excited that I was actually able to go through the entire dungeon on my own, which isn't much for veteran players, but for me, it was a huge accomplishment. One of my goals accomplished, and 2 more to go. I was still riding my high from besting the Urukton Bluffs and went back to my usual farming spot in the mausoleum, killing the disgusting flesh beasts at my leisure. That was until I killed a giant shambler, which I did hundreds of times before, but this time it dropped a chest, and inside that chest was a cave bear statue. I popped on over to the Discord server and quickly learned that this item was quite valuable to the right buyer. I just had to bide my time and wait for one. Well, it didn't take long and I had a hit, and just like that, I was 400,000 gold richer. I thought this would help me achieve my goal of buying a house, but I quickly realized that the cost of even the smallest property in Outlands was vastly more expensive than what I could afford, even with my newly acquired wealth. Instead, I opted to go a different route and acquire the 3rd item to progress my character even further, a mastery chain. Like I said earlier, the Mastery Chain is the 3rd progression system in Outlands, and it's definitely a late game mechanic. I didn't initially realize it, but upon the creation of your character, every kill is tracked based on its gold value as experience points, which slowly work towards unlocking individual links to your Mastery Chain, even if you don't own one. Even if you have the links unlocked, you still have to find individual chain links that you apply to your chain that offer small buffs. There are bronze, silver, and gold links that can be used, gold giving the highest bonuses, but also being absurdly expensive for me. The small bonuses don't really do a lot for your character until you unlock a larger amount, and then you can really start to see the benefits of it, which is why a mastery chain is fairly negligible until you can apply at least 10 or so links to it, which I still haven't even got close to unlocking that many. Anyways, without fully understanding all this because I'm an idiot, I went on a spending spree with all my newly acquired cash. Of course, it was my boy Necromir who hooked me up since he was my go-to when it came to buying and selling tradable goods. Thanks, Necromir. Another Outlands acquaintance of mine helped me craft one of the many different chain designs. 2 chains. Once I activated it for my character, I saw that I already had a single link unlocked and was sorta close to another one. Again, this wasn't much for me, but it did feel like a huge accomplishment, especially since at this point I was doing almost everything alone, which brings me to a really important topic of Outlands. So up to this point, I made a few friends and they would mostly help me with trading or crafting items, but one of my friends invited me to join his guild, the Knights of Sur. Now, guilds are a huge element of Outlands, and I really hate that it took me so long until I finally joined one. Until this point, I pretty much did all of my adventuring all by my lonesome. Before I was given a tour of the guild castle, I was gifted 2 bronze links which let me finally put my chain to use. Castle Hailstone was the guild's hub, and this place alone provided tons of perks like free item repairs, magic identification and recycling for important items, but all of this paled in comparison to the community that my new guild provided. There are always people available to help, and we would create dungeon party groups and go into the deepest and hardest depths of dungeons that I'd never be able to tackle alone. And the best part is, you're much safer against red players and barely ever die while dungeon crawling. Well, most of the time. After a short while, my personal treasury was growing and growing, and then I was given a new task from my guild leaders. I needed to sail from Shelter Island all the way to Castle Hailstone and get acquainted with my sea legs. It wasn't too long of a journey, and I was anxious to get started, so I left Shelter Island's docks and went on my merry way. It didn't take long to adjust to controlling the boat, and I was feeling good sailing the open sea. What was that? Whew, that was a close one. Oh crap. Oh boy. We're just gonna slide on over here. Fortunately, I wasn't pursued further, and I sailed into Hailstone's Castle Bay where there was a docking area. I successfully parked, unloaded my boat, and was given my very own ship that I'd be able to use anytime, which completed the second of my 3 goals. And of course, now that I had the basics down, I joined the Knights of Sur on an epic boss fight out in the sea against a dreaded sea monster. The adrenaline rushed through my veins and I crashed my ship into the beast and fought it head on. Things were looking good as we had it surrounded and were hitting it from every angle. Oh no. So it turns out I was a little too gung-ho and quickly found out that when you die at sea, you lose all the loot that was on you. That was a painful lesson to learn. But that's okay, since your ship isn't completely lost. It can be repaired and reused, so I still had my boat. At this point, I was able to farm dungeons more comfortably alone or with my guildmates. I was acquiring wealth much more quickly and able to afford more mastery chain links. After my successful trades, I thanked my patron for their business and would be off on my merry way. Oh, what's this? Aw yeah, look at that.
Yeah, boy.
Coordinated guild events allowed us to group up and fight against dungeon bosses, which are some of the hardest fights in the game. Grouping up in the castle's courtyard, we delved into the depths of the Darkmire Temple, cautiously navigating the furthest depths where we summoned Lord Bile, who was really tough. Like, really tough. Maybe I should get resurrected down here instead. What's tricky about boss fights is if you die, you have to grab your gear and re-equip it mid-fight without dying again, which is kind of stressful. And if you die again, well, you have to do it all over again. But in the end, the brave Knights of Sur bested Lord Bile in combat and his spoils were collected and delivered back to Castle Hailstone, where all the loot is dumped into a distribution chest and all the loot is evenly divided amongst all the participants. I was even able to participate in an Omni-Boss event, which is probably the strongest enemy in the entirety of Outlands and requires multiple guilds to coordinate to defeat it. While it was quite chaotic in the heat of battle, not even the Omni-Boss could defeat the group. Now, even with all the wealth I've gained since joining the Knights of Sur, I was still nowhere near being able to afford buying a house. The good news is that you can easily rent an in-room at a very affordable cost, which I'd been doing this entire time, but it was just a small, sad, empty room with a few storage chests. Accepting that I wouldn't be able to have my own property in Outlands, I decided to finally make my in-room my true home. After a little bit of rearranging some furniture, I was much more comfortable in my own personal space. After all this, it was decided that I was worthy to be promoted to a true Knight of Sur. The only issue? Hot Dog isn't a very knightly name. I was given a new name. Eleazar. Eleazar 2. The guild was summoned together for a knighting ceremony where everyone gathered around to witness the event. We formed a line and I was called forth. The knighting ceremony began. Sacred words were uttered and a sword was drawn, which completed the ritual. When I arose, I was a new man, and a celebration was had. And here we are now. You see, even though I didn't buy a property, and even without my in-room, my true home now was Castle Hailstone with the others. It's where I belong, and I think that's more than enough to satisfy my third requirement. I really can't recommend Outlands enough if you're okay with a game that can be more punishing than most and a little bit grindy, but the rewards and the community you can join make the journey well worth it. The timing couldn't be better to join now either, because very soon a massive free update is coming out to the game, adding the Wildlands, which will be a huge land expansion with all kinds of content updates. The game has an incredibly active community on Discord and always has special events going on to keep things fresh, and there are plenty of other parts of the game that I haven't even had a chance to really get into. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in playing the game, I really hope that this can help point you in the right direction. I'll leave a link in the description below with instructions on how you can install and play Outlands today. And a special thanks to all my patrons, who generously support the channel to help me continue making content like this. Thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.